I'd like to call the meeting to order, ladies and gentlemen. If we have any special intentions at this time.
Thank you, I do. Bob Marrero, who is a longtime resident of District 4, his daughter is having surgery at EJ Hospital next week for throat cancer, for thyroid cancer. So if you could all please keep her in your prayers, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mayor, administration, any? Councilman Marino, would you please lead us in a prayer?
Before I start, I'd also have a special intention. Mr. Al Templet, if you could keep his family in your prayers. Mr. Al is one of the first residents in Driftwood Park subdivision, and he passed away today. Oh, and
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was distracted. Just a overly broad intention is just to, some friends of ours have lost family pets, and that's just like a family member. So I would certainly like to keep those families in our prayers when they lose anything of their family, whether it's a person or a pet.
Thank you.
let us bow our heads and remember that we're in the presence of the Lord. Lord of justice and mercy, both strong and loving, creator of the earth and humankind, we praise you for your omnipotence, and we thank you for your presence in our lives. Lord, we ask that you teach us to love our neighbor so that we may obey your commands. We ask that you teach us to have compassion for our neighbors who may be different from us, so that we truly understand what it is to love. We ask that you give us strength to speak to those who cannot speak for themselves. Lord, we wish to do your will, to promote justice and live faithfully. We ask all these things in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Councilman Klein, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum this evening. In accordance with Council Resolution Number B14550, please be advised that all cellular telephones, pagers, beepers, and other devices of this nature must be deactivated or silenced throughout the council meeting. Mr. Chairman, I've received a request this evening to amend the agenda to include an ordinance amending portions of Chapter 16 entitled Vehicles for Hire of the Kenner Code of Ordinances as per the ordinance contained herein.
Motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilman Carroll to suspend the council rules. Council, please vote. Aye. Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 6-0 to suspend your rules.
Motion by Councilman Carroll, motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilman Carroll to amend the agenda to include 16J. Is there anyone in the audience would like to address? Please come forward now. Hearing none, council, please vote. Aye. Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Under the consent agenda this evening, we have item 1, approval of minutes, the regular council meeting of August 3rd, 2017. Item 2 is approval of alcoholic beverage permit applications. Item 2A is a resolution granting an alcoholic beverage permit to Divine Mercy Catholic Parish Seafood Festival on October 13th, 14th, and 15th, 2017 at 4337 Joe Yenny Boulevard in Kenner, Louisiana. Item 3 is approval of bingo and public gathering applications. Item 3A is application number 2038-17. The City of Kenner to hold a public gathering on September 3rd, 2017 from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. for the purpose of a Freedom Fest at the lake at Lake Town in Kenner, Louisiana. Item 4 is correspondence, reports from the mayor, CAO, or department heads. Item 4A, at the request of the administration, a report from Mayor Zahn.
Mayor Zahn, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Council Chairman. Have a few things just to go over real quickly. Between August 9th and August 16th, we have held, our code enforcement department has held at least 8 code sweeps citywide. I'll list those for you real quick. In District 1, Jerry Drive and Kingston Streets. In District 2, Idaho Street. In District 1 again, Susan Park area. In District 4, we did Wentwood and Chateau Lakefront. In University City, in District 5, we did most of University City, which we actually turned out to have about 232 citations. As you see, we're doing this citywide. I think it's important that we continue to do these things. These are commercial and residential. And if you've seen my latest post in social media, you will see that the Pavilion Shopping Center is coming around. It might not be everything that we need at this point, but those code violations, they've addressed those. They are redoing some of it. You go out there, you'll see what they're doing, and they've actually attracted new business. Actually, one of the businesses, an event rental hall, will be opening, I believe it's October 1st of this year. We did put the phone number out there because we want to help that company as much as possible and bring more to that mall area. A little bit of growth in the city. This morning, we broke ground in Councilman Carroll's district, District 1, for the East Jefferson Levy District. The new Discovery School, you'll see the buildings going up in Councilman Impostato's district in District 5. That's a lot of progress there. And because of that progress, we've seen a little change in some of the sales tax from last year, this month, or this past month, as compared to this month, this year. About a 2.8% increase. Not a lot, but I'd rather tell you it's a 2.8 increase than a decrease. Of course, we've been dealing with a lot of terrible weather, no other way to put it. And thank God at this point, we have not had any flooding caused by us. There have been a few homes in Chateau Lakefront that we came across when we were doing some code sweeps out there on Cormier Drive that did flood, but they flooded not because of the city of Kenner or Jefferson Parish. Not to point the finger at the levee board, but it's not us. No, it's hard to tell people that because they still flooded, but the proof of the flooding is it was in their back rooms, and the sand from the levee is in their homes. So we all working with the levee board on those 2 or 3 homes, I think it was. But because of this rain event that we've had since like August the 5th to the 15th, I believe and I see we continuing to do this all together. We keep you all informed through text messages. We keep you all informed. Y'all text me, keeping me informed. We have social media putting up all the time. I got to applaud the Public Works Department. I've got to applaud the Emergency Operations Department. I've got to applaud every group that is involved in this, besides the Kenner Police Department, besides the Fire Department, besides you all, and besides me and my administration. Those departments are doing a great job. If I failed to mention one of the departments, I'm sorry, but those departments are the ones that we're talking to during these rain events, and I do believe we are doing a good job keeping our residents dry. One last thing, voter registration week is August the 21st through 25th. That's important to get everybody out to vote. We hear Mr. Morella come up every time and tell us how important our vote is. I agree with him, and that's why I want to make sure Dennis DeMarco called and asked for this. So, Mr. Morella, you'll be happy that we are pushing the voter registration from August 21st to the 25th. With that, if you all have any questions.
Councilwoman DeFranchise, you have the floor.
Thank you. And Mayor, I think you have actually touched on something that we need to make sure the public is aware of. When they contact us, and I don't mean just me, I mean anyone in the city of Kenner, whether it's a council person or your office, that we do address their issues very, very carefully. And I want to point one out in Chateau Lakefront. Because a constituent took the time to call us and let us know that the same 22 homes during the last 3 rainstorms lost power, Entergy was not aware they were the same 22 homes. And if that person had not called and let us know, that issue would not have been addressed. And they actually, Mr. Fenn actually answered a request, and they sent a specialist out to determine what the problem was, and they did determine what the problem was, and that was water was infiltrating into a cover that had broken, and those 22 homes were all being impacted. And again, unless that, sometimes we are told about those problems, we can't address them. So please, I think you agree, and I know you've been telling people, please don't hesitate to let us know what the problems are, because we will work to try to address them.
Absolutely.
So thank you to your administration again for to working on that with us.
Thank you, and thank you for keeping us updated with the recent drain situation, which I know we corrected, and also when you call us about these Entergy problems. As you know, it's all underground wiring, which is, it's very aesthetically pleasing, but it's a nightmare. because that's what happens. It gets wet, and my parents, my parents live in Chateau Lakefront, so they experience that also.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for your help.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Impastato, you have the floor, sir.
Mayor Zahn, one of the things, representing a good bit of North Kenner, obviously my phone's been ringing pretty steadily over the last 2 weeks, as you know, as that area has been particularly hit by the rain, and I'm not going to call it flooding, but lots of water in the streets. A lot of people don't know that that the parish government, not the city of Kenner, operates the pumps and operates the drainage. I know you posted on social media, but I wondered if you wanted to take this opportunity for anyone that's here, but more importantly, anybody who might be watching this, to give a report on your contact with the parish, or our contact with the parish, where we investigated into on August 5th and the days thereafter. Were the pumps operating? Do we have data to prove that they were operating?
Yes.
At all times, that sort of thing? Would you mind commenting on that?
Absolutely, and as you know, we've had those conversations, and I've had it with a few of you all. Our job is to get it from the streets, which the streets are designed to hold water, okay? That's the design of a street. Get it from the streets to our drains and get it to the canal. Once it gets to the canal, the parish needs to pump that. Of course, and look, I almost feel the same way when you look at the street and it's like, oh God, it's coming in my house. The pumps go on at a certain time, and I believe after Councilman Impastato and I spoke a number of times, we actually put that out because he requested through me to get that breakdown of how the pumps went on, what the flooding levels were and everything, and we put that out there. The pumps will go on at a certain point and they will pump that out of our canals. Perfect example, myself and Lewis were out there and we had some people in, not too far, actually your subdivision, complaining about the water came into their backyard from the canal. Impossible. The water level was, you could see it was 4 feet down from the canal base, so it never even topped. The parish administration sent us pictures also further down, right before my neighborhood, into Councilman Klein's district, showing that the canal was right before some of those bridges, but it never came up over that bridge. Make a long story short, they have been putting the pumps on. And if you watch TV, you see that they are addressing numerous issues with the flooding situation and worried about the 17th Street Canal, which won't affect us, but they are on top of what they need to be on top of. And I'm glad to report that, even though it's not our responsibility, but we want to make sure we make it their responsibility and keep on top of them. And they're doing that because if they don't, yes, Kenner would flood. I feel very confident on the things that have happened, on how the administration over there has handled it, along with our council people, our 2 council people that represent us, our 4 with the 2 at-larges. They have done everything that they can to make sure that they work with that administration to keep our residents dry. We preach that to everyone. I would appreciate you all telling as many residents as that we're not, pointing the finger, but we are in constant contact with Jefferson Parish administration. Another thing about your district, Councilman Impastato, is that we need to, when I was a parish councilman, and you as a city councilman for that district, we talked about and we did design something that would alleviate a lot of the flooding, not the street flooding, but keep the homes from flooding, and probably not be as bad, because it was pretty bad in some areas of your district, and Councilman Klein. It's probably the highest I've seen it come in a long time, not right before their front door, but close to their front door, Chateau Lakefront and numerous areas of your district. We had done something, we had designed it, I believe it's completed. We need to actually look at that and reach out to our parish council people and also the parish administration and say, hey, we need some help with funding this, because it was a pump. I'm not an engineer, nor do I pretend to be, but it's a pump, and you know that, that would actually keep that area dry. And I think it might have stretched actually into your district, Chateau Lakefront, a little bit. Not completely all of it, but a little bit of it. Because that is a problem out there, and that's where we really got pounded, and that's really where most of the street flooding came from, or was at. So something you and I need to talk about and also pull Councilman Klein into.
Yeah, well, and also I guess what I was trying to get to as well is the fact that all of the pump operations in Jefferson Parish, unlike Orleans, but in Jefferson Parish, are monitored by the SCADA system. Right. And that's kind of what if you want to comment on it, I'm happy to give a little bit of. I think it's important for everyone to understand that we didn't just ask Jefferson Parish officials, hey, were the pumps all operating? And they told us yes, and we walked away and said, okay. No, they showed us the data,
Right.
which is computer monitored data. It's called the SCADA, I'm not,
I don't know what-
yeah, whatever. Say it fast and nobody knows the difference, but no. It's a computer system that keeps 24-hour-a-day data on those pumps to show when they turned on, what levels they pumped, et cetera, 24 hours a day. They are manned 24 hours a day. So I think it's critical for everyone to understand that. So there is a clear record in Jefferson Parish of exactly when the pump's on, when were they operating, are they operating, et cetera. So thankfully, we don't have the fear, well, we might have the fear, we shouldn't have the fear that citizens on the other side of 17th Street Canal have. And so we've got the data, it shows everything was operational, and all were operating during all those times. And in fact, the pumps were turned on in advance of when the rain actually started touching the concrete. So they were out there in advance. Unfortunately, came out in some instances in excess of 2 to 3 inches in an hour, which is just more than what the largest drainage pumping system in the world is designed to handle. But anyway.
And days of it raining, by that point, it had already rained for a few days already. There's no place else for it to go either. Normal drainage is not there in the grass, not in concrete, but in the grass. So we're having that problem also. Today was a good sunny day. We need about a week of that, but, hopefully we'll start moving toward that direction. But again, thank y'all.
Thank you, Councilman. Mayor, I have a couple of comments on the whole litany of things that you addressed. First is for the code sweeps, particularly in District 1. I think it's become infectious that even the citizens within District 1 now, and I'm sure out the whole city, are responding positively to it. One of the negative things about it, unfortunately, was a lot of the neighbors felt that, for lack of a better word, that their neighbors were ratting them out about this. You guys have taken the load off of the neighbors to show that it is something that's becoming part of the norm for the city. And I think everybody can appreciate that. And it's spreading. Everybody's trying to do a little bit more, a little bit better to include their neighborhood to look better. And I think that's going to continue to go. The second thing is, as it relates, as Councilman Impastato said about it didn't flood in his particular area. Well, there were some flooding in District 1. There were some water that got in people's homes. So we did have flooding. We're the most oldest part of the city. We have the most antiquated drainage system. Some of our areas still have terracotta piping. But when we do repairs, we change that and we increase the size of the piping because we still have 50 years ago, the size of it. So we're going through all of this. One of the things Mr. Doe addressed when he was working in a position in Public Works was that the schedule for cleaning out, while we're not responsible for the pumps, we are responsible to clean out the catch basins, the drains that we have. I saw a couple of guys working on a continuous basis on cleaning it out. We have over 300, I believe, but I would like to find out the status of that, to see where we are of the 300. Do we start in a certain area? Do we prioritize it to find out so I can know to be able to address, yes, ma'am, they have started, they have done that, to be able to get some information. So Mr. Dowd is out. I would just want to know who would I speak to get that information, that particular schedule for the cleaning of that, for that apparatus.
So we actually had a meeting planned today, a lunch meeting planned, and I had to cancel it for the family emergency, to actually talk to someone. Our Public Works can do that, and I will let Jimmy Dennis actually speak, but actually looking at getting a little more in depth. So to let y'all know, because I haven't had a chance to talk to you all about that, that's something we're going to look at. I'm going to let Jimmy Dennis actually address not the simple parts, but the parts that we can handle. Mr.
Okay.
Dennis.
Mr. Dennis, name and tell everybody your position too, Mr. Dennis.
Jimmy Dennis, I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir, Councilman. In the last week, we started flushing some drain lines on Clay and Webster. We've had several complaints these last couple of weeks with these rainstorms about those areas, flooding in the streets and holding a bunch of water. For the last 3 days, they've been working in the 300, 400, 500 block of Clay Street. They've cleared those drain lines. Tomorrow and on to next week, they'll be going on over to Webster Street. Then when they finish that, they're going to go over towards Moray, Pollock, Farm, Centennial, those streets over there.
Yes. And Mr. Dennis, could you give me, not today, tomorrow, at least by next week early, the complete listing of those areas that occupies District 1? So I'll know, I'll be astute enough to share information with the community just for District 1. And also, like I said, an update of where we're going with the schedule like going forward from here.
Yes, I'll get that to you sometime.
I'd appreciate that. And the last thing, Ms. Fauché, it's good to hear about of all the things we've gone through with the East Jefferson Levy District. It's good to know that things have calmed down in that area. But if you could get me the information for the new director so he can update me on some things going forward to be able to also be inclusive with the community so everybody will know what's going on from A to B. I would appreciate that. Thank you, ma'am. Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir, that will conclude the consent agenda this evening. I believe we have a motion by Councilmember DeFranchis, second by Councilmember Wilmot for the consent agenda this evening. Council members, if you could, please vote.
Aye.
Under the public appearance agenda this evening, we have item 9, public hearings for final passage. Item 9A is summary ordinance number 12,275, an ordinance authorizing a public hearing and amending ordinance number 11,278 adopted on May 18, 2017, to correct the proposed grant allocations with the official grant allocations received for the fiscal year 2017 annual action plan of the CDBG and Home Investment Partnership Program for the Community Development Department.
Before we move on, Ms. Montgomery, I know you're new, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but as far as it relates to the actual part that we're addressing today, could you give us a little bit of information on that, please?
We have to open first.
We'll move first. We'll move. Motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilman Segura. Council, please vote.
To open public.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0 to open your hearing.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'm Brenda Richard Montgomery, Interim Director for Community Development. As I reported earlier this summer, we finally got our allocation amounts from HUD. The Congress voted on a budget. And so the ordinance that's being taken up tonight is just to correct the actual dollar amount that we received from HUD as opposed to an estimate that was proposed before.
So what was our estimate,
It was $408,000,
and what are the actuals?
$415,000 and change.
Okay, well, that seems to be the trend from the past 5 years.
Unfortunately, yes. The budget amounts have declined, and so our allocation is as well. It would be wonderful if we would, at some point in time, maybe do some education with our legislative board that's on the federal level so we can share with them what good that money does for our community and how it would help us so much more if we received more of those funds.
Yeah, I think that should be something we should do. Councilman Wilmot, just briefly, could you let us know who obviously we know everybody who represents our city, but is there anyone specifically within the state legislature that we could contact from the councilmatic position to address particularly support for that, if you don't mind?
Of course, we have 4 legislators that represent the city of Kenner. We have 2 state reps and we have 2 senators. We do have one state rep. Currently, she is on Ways and Means and may have some input on that. I know that those committee members and as well as the support staff there, they keep track of the grants and so forth. So that's Julie Stokes. So I would hope that we might be able to contact her and get some of that information regarding grants.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Ms. Montgomery.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Yes. I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll, second by Councilmember Segura to close your hearing. Council members, please vote.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0 to close your hearing. I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll, second by Councilmember Segura for approval.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0 to approve. Item 10 is opening of bids. We have none. Item 11 is reclassification of zoning for final passage. We have none. Item 12 is other ordinances for final passage. Item 12A is summary ordinance number 12,274, an ordinance amending portions of Chapter 16 entitled Vehicles for Hire of the Kenner Code of Ordinances as per the ordinance contained herein.
Motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilman Wilmot. Councilman, please vote.
Mr. Chairman, I've received a request this evening to amend the ordinance prior to the vote for approval. If I could, would you like me to read the amendment
Please.
into the record?
Yes, thank you.
Tonight, I've received a request from Councilmember Segura that we are to amend, he's requesting to amend the ordinance to delete sections 1, 2, and 3 in its entirety from the ordinance and to renumber the sections accordingly, and to restore a portion of the text to section 16-115B of the ordinance so that it reads, "A holder of a CPNC permit shall require a driver involved in a traffic accident while providing driving services to submit a drug test within 24 hours."
Motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilman Wilmot. Councilman Segura, you have the floor first.
Oh, okay. I just want to say that the purpose of this amendment to take out these sections comes about from discussions with various stakeholders, whether it be the City of New Orleans, the taxi union, and the AFL-CIO, to understand that these words were maybe not as clear as we intended when we put them in, and that the intent now is to remove them from this legislation tonight and put them into what we voted on earlier to amend the agenda to add 16J, and then that will allow us to continue the talks with the stakeholders on this topic for a later date so that we can have more time to consider the options that we put forth. Most of this was to allow Kenner taxis, when they drive a fare into the city of New Orleans, presently they're not allowed to pick up a fare and return to the city. So this was in an attempt to try to get approvals from the city of New Orleans and work it out so that the Kenner drivers could pick up a fare and return. Right now, a New Orleans taxi driver can come from the city of New Orleans with a fare, whether it be to the city of Kenner in the city or to the airport, drop off that fare, and then get in the taxi line at the airport and return to the city with a fare. So they get a complete circle, and the TNCs that we voted on a month or so ago have the same privilege. They can pick up from the airport, drive a fare to the city, pick up a fare, and return back to the airport. So what has become clear that is not as fair as it should be is the ability of taxi drivers, CP&C drivers in the city of Kenner to do the same. So the intent for these words was to try to get to that point. So because of some obvious discussions that just we never got to the point of clearing it up enough to vote on tonight, I'm hoping that we can remove them, and that will show up at our next meeting or soon after, whatever meeting to vote on after we have more dialogue with them. Once we remove these words from this legislation, then what's left is what we will vote on tonight, and I'll discuss more about that when we get to it.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Epistato, you have the floor, sir.
Yes, Mr. Nurhan Gunsekir, would you mind coming up? And I asked Mr. Gunsekir, as I know in our last meetings, he's been the representative of the taxi cab union. Is that still the case, Mr. Nurhan?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to know from your perspective, I mean, I certainly trust my colleague, Councilman Segura, but I was curious if you could give us on behalf of the taxi cab industry, do you agree with the way Councilman Segura recited the taxi cab industry's feelings about the ordinances we're proposing and the amendments?
Yes, so let me explain why. Me being the president of the taxi cab union in the metropolitan area, I had to look at everybody's interest, whether it's New Orleans or St. Charles Parish or City of Kenner or unincorporated Jefferson Parish. So it's going to happen if this goes through, you're pitting one taxi driver against another, whereas the TNC's got a free ride. I don't want to go back to the TNC issue because I know we passed it, but I have to explain it in such a way that everybody would understand where we are. We are in one ship. We are sailing through troubled waters. Ship is taking water, and if the crew fight among themselves, it's not a good scene. So that's my answer to it. I think it needs a real open dialogue, and I don't think we did that. You know, City of Kenner need to have a good conversation with the City of New Orleans in this regard, and maybe then we could, you know, have this discussion later date.
So would it be fair to say that from the union's perspective, with the amendment that's being proposed, pulling those sections off and putting
For a
it off
later
for
date.
another couple of weeks, you're okay with that?
Right.
And okay with the rest of what's in there, what's left in the current ordinance? Is that fair?
Not really. There's few more things. I had this conversation with Mr. Reno and Mr. Segura. That's the CPNC cap. It is very important because you have to follow the other jurisdictions. New Orleans has a cap, unincorporated Jefferson Parish has it, and St. Charles Parish has one. That's one. Then the other issue is the $250 you guys want to charge a CPNC holder who is not from the City of Kenner. I think that's way too much because I have explained my situation the last time I spoke. Like me, I have a Jefferson Parish CPNC. To work with that CPNC, I had to pay unincorporated Jefferson Parish $250. Then just to work the airport, I got to pay the airport $250. And top of that, now Kenner is demanding another $250 from me. So where I'm going to get this money? I went to my backyard, I didn't see no money tree. So, I've been driving a cab for 30 plus years. I'm a senior in this business, but I feel sorry for the guys who are coming, following my footsteps. They don't have a future. They're going to be the modern day slave, I'm just telling you as it is, I feel very, very upset because like me, I'm an immigrant to this country. And I appreciate what this country has offered me. And I see the other immigrants coming behind me. They won't be able to buy a house. They won't be able to follow the American dream. They'll be the gypsies running from one city to another city looking for work. I don't want that situation. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Morella, Councilman Reno,
Sure.
let's let. Okay, Councilman Moreno, you have the floor.
Thank you, Naran, for being here and answering my questions earlier. The airport, in order to pick up at the airport, you have certain background checks that you have to
Right.
pass for TSA and for Homeland Security, correct?
Right. So, you could pass anything here. You could tell a cab driver from City of Kenner, CPNC holder, hey, you get a bug Fiat or get a pickup truck and you could be a cab driver. You don't have to have a proper background check. You don't have to have this or that. But when they come to the airport is operating under the City of New Orleans rules. They are not going to let you work. So you could pass very minimum requirements, no rules, no public safety. That's fine. But you're not going to work at the airport.
So basically, if we pass this legislation, the way I understand what you're telling me, is that Kenner cab drivers who have a Kenner CPNC will not be able to pick up at the airport.
Right, unless they change, unless they go with the new airport requirements, because the airport wants you to have a camera, a panic button, a smart meter, a year of a vehicle, and there's requirements. They won't let you drive a bus, like a huge 15-passenger van.
But those are New Orleans requirements, so the airport is just following New Orleans requirements.
Right.
So is there a lot of Kenner taxi drivers that have CPNCs that don't have New Orleans CPNCs that will be left out and not be able to pick up at the airport?
Yes, if they follow the ones that you have passed, because if they, as the president of our union, we educate our members about different jurisdictional rules and regulations. I would inform my Kenner members, do not fall for this, have your proper equipment. But if they don't know about anything, or if they don't speak to me, or they don't find out, they're gonna come out there and find out later they cannot work at the airport.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Segura, you have the floor.
If I can, Michelle? Go ahead. Wait,
hold on.
Michelle, don't run off. Oh, okay, but I need you here. Since Mr. Naran has brought up some comments that's the first I did hear of any possibility that any of this legislation would prevent a Kenner cab from picking at the airport. Can you shed some light on that? Because I've not heard that from you this evening or Mr. Butterworth during our days and weeks of conversation with him.
Michelle Allenhart, General Counsel, New Orleans Aviation Board, 900 Airline Drive. The way that I read the proposed ordinance, it is not taking away the requirement that the cars be outfitted in a certain way. It's taking the inspection away. So it's taking away the mechanism for Kenner to check to see if your drivers are complying with all of your vehicle requirements. But I did not see in here where it changed the underlying requirements for how your cabs are supposed to be outfitted. All I see here, and maybe I'm not reading it the same way as Mr. Naran, but I'm not seeing it as it's removing the requirements apart, age of vehicles or anything that Kenner might already have in place. It's just removing your check to see if they are doing that. So I don't read it the same way as the union's reading it.
That's generally the way it was worked under from the weeks that we've been working on this, is that all of our other rules in our Chapter 16 that dealt with that are still there. We're not taking those out. What we're taking out is just some of these rules that in the workup to approving TNCs, and we wanted TNCs to have a higher level of regulations equal to cab taxi drivers, but those regulations did not set well with parties affiliated with TNCs. So as a result, things were reduced down to where a TNC is not inspected twice a year. They get a brake tag, and that's acceptable. So this legislation was just going to do, and again, partially right now, we're discussing the amendment to remove something, not the legislation of what we're voting on. So I'm going to continue the line of thought only because this is where we're going. But all we're doing right now, as I appreciate, is deciding whether to remove components from the legislation that I filed. And then when we get back to voting on that legislation, we'll have this continual discussion. But
Thank you. I appreciate that, Councilman Segura. Let's stick to that format.
okay. So
But somebody brought it up, so we had to talk a little. Well, we didn't have to, but I thought it was good to address it
That's
a little
fair,
bit
but I
more.
just
When somebody mentions something about, and you don't want to scare the public, when you hear something like that, it's best to address it shortly because the attorney here has an opinion, the union driver has an opinion. So before we start putting out stuff like that, let's address it later a little bit more.
because what we are changing was the recommendation of the AFL-CIO, which is part of the taxi union is part of. So we took their lead, or I did, as the council committed to do, and introduced this But this component of asking the city of New Orleans to allow a Kenner taxi to have the right privilege to pick up a ride and come back is all that I'm asking to be removed from this legislation. And then the rest is a different discussion for the moment. But again, I had to at least clear up that I never heard anything in here to the distinct that Mr. Neuron went into.
And just for clarification as well, the inspection may be waived, but if the underlying statute in Kenner still requires those requirements, if they come to the airport and we notice that they don't have it, just because they didn't happen to get an inspection doesn't mean that we're not going to point it out, or it may impact their ability to come, because we all want to have safe and convenient travel for our community.
Absolutely, and that's the same recourse in the city of New Orleans, where this would have gone to is we were going to have it worked out, which we need more talking to get there, is that whatever rules the city of New Orleans Council has put in place for taxis in the city of New Orleans, if a Kenner taxi drops off and wants to pick up, that's a consideration that they will have to follow rules in New Orleans, as that may be the course that New Orleans has. But we haven't got there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman DeFrances, and let's stick to the
Well, I
you,
got off topic, that's why.
well, we back on topic
Well, then
right
I'm
now.
not going to, I don't need to speak on it.
Okay. Councilman Impastato on the amendment.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was just asking if they were comfortable with us making the amendment
Correct.
that was to be made. And so that's what I was trying to.
But it kind of,
No, I understand. And so that's all I was trying to get first. And I'll reserve the remainder of my questioning or comments
Yes.
for the,
thank you.
for the main.
And Councilwoman DeFrances, you can
Do the same.
the same thing.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Morella, name and address, sir.
Al Morella, 4260 East Loyola Drive, 5th District, 45 years. First of all, you know, we've been discussing this for quite some time now down here, but I want to say this because I keep hearing from different politicians that this is two separate industries. It is not. All one has to do.
Mr. Morella, let's stick to the amendment.
I'm on this subject, man. We on the taxi cab. We on the
No,
TNC.
we're on the amendment. We're on the amendment.
Well, I'm not talking. I'm not talking about.
Okay,
the
well, then you
amendment.
can.
I'm talking about.
Well, let's wait until when we get to that.
Well, that's fine.
Thank you,
I'll wait.
sir.
Go ahead.
But it's going to be, you might want to sit down until we get there.
I can stand all night if I have to, man.
Okay.
It don't hurt me to stand up.
All right. Okay, now, I think everyone has talked on that. There's nothing else, so we can vote on the amendment. On the amendment, Madam Clerk, could you read it again, please?
Where's that piece of paper? The amendment would be to delete sections 1 through 3 of the legislation and renumber them accordingly, and it restores a portion of the text to the section of 16-115B of the ordinance so that it reads, "A holder of a CP&C permit shall require a driver involved in a traffic accident while providing driving services to submit a drug test within 24 hours."
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilman Wilmot. Council, please,
Only on the amendment.
On the amendment, that's what.
on the amendment.
And if I can, to clarify, that's the amendment to remove just this reciprocity
Right.
concept. Not, but you just read something about the drug test within 24 hours.
Doing it in Globo.
Or you're doing it in Globo?
Yes.
You want me to?
Wait, we're putting back in for that, so I just want to make clear we're.
Yes, we're adding that verbiage in.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
as long as everybody understands.
And we're
There was
deleting
another-
sections.
I thought a second amendment, but if she's doing it in Globo, there was a sentence that was in our legislation that failed to get back in here, and that was to require a drug test within 24 hours of an accident. And we were putting the sentence back in. So we're taking it and taking something out and putting something in.
Right.
That's
We're not excluding it.
Yes, sir.
So again, for the vote, motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilman Wilmot. Please vote. Council, please vote. Aye. Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, motion passes 7-0 on the amendment. Back to your original motion, which is motion by Councilmember Segura, second by Councilmember Wilmot.
Council, please vote.
Well, we can have a discussion now for the
Oh,
rest.
discussion. I don't see, oh, yes,
Mr.
Councilman
Morrell.
Moreno.
Otherwise, he'll get mad at you.
Oh, you want to,
Now, this is what he,
with Councilman Moreno?
if I can, I will just open for that portion.
Okay.
Remember, I opened on the amendment.
Right.
And now let me just, if I can, open.
Yes, sir,
for the
please
rest.
open.
As I slightly touched on a second ago, after we did our due diligence and went through the length of time to come to an understanding for TNCs, and as you may recall, at that meeting, I had a variety of individuals come up and state that they were in favor of that legislation, with the exception of Mr. Nuran, who was speaking for taxis and said that they were not happy because they actually wanted to see regulations for TNCs at the higher level that they are. But as it turns out, they were not, so they were not happy. I made the pledge with a lot of nodding from across this dais that others were in favor of, let's go back, do some work, and find things that we could do to help out the taxi industry now that may have had regulations that didn't seem to apply, because if we're going to allow the TNCs not to be at that level, we could release them from that regulation. So in doing that work, one of the things I did was we all received a letter last year from Mr. Tiger Hammond, president of the AFL-CIO, where he listed 10 items that were of a concern to the taxi industry, that if the TNCs were going to be at a lower level, then he would like for that to be addressed. So in speaking with him, he reiterated, that's what I want to see. So that's where I took it and worked with the city attorney in looking at the TNC legislation, our Chapter 16, and his letter, and took issues that were not at that level anymore and worded them to get them down to the level where the taxis and the TNCs would be at the same level. Some of these examples were a physician's statement to get a CP&C required that. It was talked about heavily during the negotiations with TNCs that all of their drivers are mom and pops and people doing part-time work, and they just didn't see the need to have them go through and have a physician statement. So, okay, my following through was, that sounds like a good point that could be removed, because why does a taxi driver have to have one if a TNC driver doesn't have one? TNCs are doing the same service. Then we went down the line and we did other things like some of the trademarks or dressing on the cars, the clothes that they had to wear, a taxi driver had to wear, where TNCs can have freedom to wear what they want to wear. So the items that are in the legislation are the outcome of doing that. We've had talks with, I've had talks with, again, Tiger Hammond as of this afternoon, and even though there was a slightly confusing letter that was sent out yesterday, in discussing with him today, and partially Mr. Naran coming up here answering Councilman Impostata's question that the taxi union is okay with now what's left in the legislation, that he wanted to clarify that whatever he sent you, he's okay with what's left now. That his holdup was just strictly following the lead of the taxi union in the reciprocity portion, and that he wanted to agree that if we could defer that and deal with that separately, that he was strongly in favor to what's left. And he asked me to convey that, but if certainly anybody chooses, they can call him, and I'm sure he will give you the same answer. So that's where we're at right now, is to hopefully pass the rest of this legislation now, which would give some relief to our Kenner taxi drivers to help out for some of the things that they feel that they've been sort of misaligned with the other TNC legislation. And some of these which cost them money, will now not cost them money. So it is financial savings as well. So, but like I said, I think Michelle Hart has clarified that a little bit from what Mr. Naran said. Our Chapter 16 rules that have been in place that say what's there, the age of a taxi, what equipment must be in it, is still there. This does not address or do any of removal of any of that. One of the things was cameras, and as I have talked to other council members up here, I wasn't part of the taxi legislation that was passed some years ago, that its cameras are not presently required in our legislation or laws. So the fact that they're picking up at the airport without a camera right now, I'm not sure how that is now a problem, but,
It can,
so I don't know if you want to ad lib on that, but.
Honestly, I'd have to take a look at it and see and speak to our ground transportation team and find out. Just because y'all might not require it, doesn't mean that the cabs aren't outfitted it already. It is pretty a modern practice now, just for safety reasons, so I don't know the answer. I'd have to look into it.
And that's fair. I understand that even though it was not in that legislation, which sort of followed after the City of New Orleans' big taxi restructuring rules for cameras, for credit card readers, for panic buttons and various things, that the council at that time did not incorporate all of those in here. I was not part. I think two of y'all may have been, or Greg, three. But the camera issue, as I appreciate, was not required here in Kenner, so that was an issue that I agree. If they want to pick up in New Orleans or at the airport, and it's required, then that's a decision they have to make if they want to do that business. But our statute, as it read, said no. So please look into that, because obviously they have been picking up out there for a couple years, and you haven't rejected them, I presume. So I don't know, contrary to, yes, we'll get to that, how that would be an issue maybe now.
Are you done, Councilman?
If you want to question her?
Yeah.
Okay, please.
Is that okay?
Councilman Segura, you have the floor.
Yeah.
You done, Councilman Segura?
Well, of her, Ms. Hart, yes.
Okay, you're gonna close if you because you're
Well,
open. You can.
Mr. Naran's next, and I had questions for him, or Mr.
Oh.
Howe, but whichever.
No, Councilman Segura. Reno, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you. So this legislation that we have on for Kenner CPNCs, do you know how it differs from New Orleans CPNCs? Because the way I understand it at the airport, New Orleans CPNCs cover everything that y'all need as far as TSA and Homeland Security in order to allow those taxis, those meaning New Orleans CPNC taxis, to pick up at the airport. So I just want to make sure that if we pass this, that if we have Kenner cab drivers that only have a Kenner CPNC, are these requirements good enough to allow those Kenner taxi drivers to pick up at the airport? That's what I'm trying to determine.
They're still going to have to comply with what the airport's requirements are, as it's always been for the last several years. I think those changes went through in 2012 is when those big changes went through. In my understanding, I don't run the transportation department, which is why I have to investigate what you were talking about, Mr. Segura. But my understanding is that if you're going to be at the airport, you got to follow our rules, and our rules mirror 163 of the Code of Ordinances of Orleans Parish.
And this ordinance,
Doesn't prevent you from dropping off. You can drop off all day long.
right,
It's if you want to get a permit and you want to pick up.
but if we, so to get a permit and to pick up, if we pass this ordinance tonight, will the Kenner cab drivers be able to pick up? Can you answer that? And if you can't, that's fine, just say I
If
can't.
the Kenner drivers have cars that comply with the airport's requirements, what you're passing tonight doesn't impact it one way or the other, because as I read it, it's not changing what your underlying car requirements are. It's just saying you don't have to do an inspection. You can do an inspection in a different way but Kenner's not going to require an inspection for you to get your CPNC. And that is almost talking apples and oranges because you're not addressing the underlying car, or what the car requirements are, which is what your question is. This ordinance doesn't deal with that, as I read it.
Okay.
I hope that helps. You
Well,
looked a little bit like maybe I didn't.
Just wanted to confirm that Kenner taxis will be able to pick up at the airport. It's not going to be, oh, well, you don't comply because,
If they don't comply, they will not be able to pick up at the airport. This passage of what you're passing today doesn't make a difference one way or the other as to whether or not a car complies, because you're not changing what's required of your cab drivers in compliance with their cars.
but our existing legislation, if we don't pass this, does comply with the airport rules.
No, I don't think that they do. I'd have to go back and do a full comparison, but if you did not adopt what was adopted by Jefferson Parish and St. Charles and Orleans in 2012, then there probably is a difference between the two.
Okay, I was told that we had the strictest rules on CPNCs, so we don't.
Probably not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Epistado, you have the floor.
Ms. Hart, I'm going to see if I can try and make it simple, at least for me. Any cab that wants to pick up at the airport has to comport with the airport's requirements, correct?
Correct.
Without reference or regard to Kenner's rules, correct?
Correct.
So we can pass this legislation tonight, and this will not prevent cabs, Kenner taxis, from picking up at the airport. Is that correct?
As long as they comply with the airport's rules.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman DeFrancis, you have the floor.
Thank you. Ms. Hart, what I'm hearing from you is that since we're not going to inspect them, it's up to the individual driver to, if he wants to come to the airport, it'll be his responsibility to make sure he complies. And how are you at the airport going to check those to see if he does comply with the regulations as they now exist?
When you come and get your permit, or it's not a permit anymore, it's just when you come and get your taxi decal, you come up to the office, you fill out the paperwork, and there is an inspection process. It is not the same inspection that you guys used to do or that you're going to change here. It's a different inspection.
Right.
We are not as concerned with some of the issues that inspectors are concerned with. We're not checking the meters to see if the stickers have been altered, which, is not a TNC issue because it's all electronic, but is an issue in cabs and making sure that those meters are not altered. That's not something that we inspect, but if they come in with a big old broken windshield, that's noticeable, that's right in our face, they're gonna have a problem when they try to get a permit.
At one time, when the airport was working with the representative from New Orleans, I remember very distinctly that one of the two differences we had between our Kenner cabs and what we required, even though they were working at the airport, as opposed to what the New Orleans cab drivers had to do, was that the Orleans cab drivers had to have a fixed instrument which would give a printout of what the customer, was being charged. Whereas with our Kenner regulations, we were allowed to let them have the cube, for example, which would send the message directly to their cell phones, for example. My understanding, if I remember correctly, it's been quite a while, so forgive me, was that the airport was willing to accept some of those minor differences. Is that still the case?
I would have to check and see, but it probably is.
Okay.
As I said earlier, our inspections are not the same as a cab inspection, and there are certain aspects of the city's rules. We are not in the business of taxi compliance. That is handled by safety and permits down at City Hall in Orleans Parish. Our main core mission is transportation, and so we keep focused on that.
But that's why I brought that issue about the differences in inspection and again, the drivers taking the responsibility now rather than the city, it seems to be, taking the responsibility to see that they're in compliance. Am I correct then in what I've just stated?
The city handles compliance. If we have an issue, we report that to the city. If it's a major problem, we might pull their airport decal, but we are not in the business of taxi cab regulation. We are in the business of transportation of passengers on planes and making sure they can get from point A to point B.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miron, name and address, because we're still,
Again, Greg, one more question just to follow up, just to clear up.
okay.
Ms. Hart, we've had different conversations about this legislation may or may not prevent a taxi from working at the airport. And I know you kind of said you didn't see where it would, but the fact is, I don't know of anything in this legislation that would, because we checked that, but anything that you're saying would stop a Kenner taxi from working should have been addressed in the years since that other law was put here that y'all have been checking. So if they're still working now, they should still work in 17 days after this takes effect.
We do not anticipate changing our procedures on how we deal with and who we allow to operate at the airport.
Okay.
So
So,
are you okay?
so then basically you have no opposition.
We don't have any opposition to what's being proposed as modified by your amendment.
Okay. I think that clears up the question that we were still trying to figure out. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Miron, you have the floor.
Sure.
Name and address.
Okay, thank you. Niran Gunasekara, ASME Local 234, resides in 253 Diane Drive, St. Rose. So I just want to make it clear. It's very simple. Like I said, I drive a Jefferson Parish taxi cab. Jefferson Parish does not require you to have a credit card machine inside your cab. When I come to the airport, they make sure that I have a credit card machine inside the airport. The way they check your car is this. They send a letter when they are issuing a decal to you saying, Kenner, St. Charles Parish, and unincorporated Jefferson Parish cabs, you must go to David Drive. We approve this inspection station just to inspect your equipment, which means you got to have a panic button. When somebody puts a gun to your head, you press the panic button, and somebody would answer and ask, what's your emergency? I'm just about to be killed. That's the purpose of that panic button. I had to pay $30 for that service. Then you got to have $1,500 camera system in your car that is hooked to your main wire harness. That ruins your warranty once you do that. We talked against all of this in 2012, but we were forced. It's another subject, but the airport does not allow you to work at the airport until you get an inspection report of your equipment. Then there's the other issue. If you don't have the equipment in your car, you could work the short line. There is two lines at the airport. There's the long line that gives you the opportunity to take people to New Orleans and beyond New Orleans. Or you could work the short line without the equipment, but you won't make much money unless you steal. You just take people to Kenner and Jefferson Parish and maybe St. Charles, but not much business there. Majority of our conventions, they go to New Orleans. So everybody is working at the long line, complying with the airport rules. What this ordinance that you all introducing, I'm for it now. We sent two letters. The first letter, we were very concerned because certain amendments that we thought need to be removed for us to support it. I spoke to you, I spoke to Mr. Renault. I was happy, so I could support the Kenner ordinance because in actuality, it's not going to affect me. But whoever gets a Kenner CPNC, he will have to comply with the airport regulations to work. So I'm happy as it is what you all introduced, I support it. My only concern is the CPNC cap, the $250 you want to charge us, and the other issue with the jurisdictional And I want you guys to add something. If you hold a Kenner CPNC, if you are a Kenner CPNC holder, get that CPNC holder to have
30
another
seconds, sir.
driver. Jefferson Parish has that. New Orleans has that. Make 2 drivers in 1 car. That's great for everybody. You solve the joblessness problem too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrell. Ms. Morella, name and address.
Al Morella, 4260 East Loyola Drive, 5th District, 45 years. We good to go now, Greg? We back on the original legislation? We good to go?
Yes, sir. You good to go for 3 minutes.
All right, my friend. First of all, you know, it's been my contention all along, man, that this is one industry. This is not 2 industries. All one has to do is get a hold of Webster's New World Dictionary and look up the word transport. This is one industry. Rules should apply across the board for the entire industry. Now, it was revealed, now I understand, because I asked this question the last time we got on this subject, why there wasn't any cab company representatives in this chamber. Well, now I know why, because it was revealed back in May that if you call them Uber, Lyft, I call them the outfit. That's how I recognize them, as the outfit. Anyway, if one of those drivers is hailed and they cannot accommodate a handicapped person, they call the cab company to send out a cab to accommodate this person with disabilities. So the cab companies, I'm sure they're not doing this for the outfit out of the kindness of their heart. So I'm sure they're getting paid a handsome fee for dispatching one of their cabs. So they must be doing all right. They're working together with these people, while their cab drivers are stuck out with all of this. Now I see Mr. Nareem, he's here by himself all the time. You never see anybody from these cab companies here talking about anything, backing this man up what he has to say. No, they never hear. So I say this to Mr. Nareem, if your own people don't have your back with this issue, I do. And I don't even have a dog in this hunt. And as far as New Orleans is concerned, I get so sick of hearing New Orleans this and New Orleans that. First of all, that airport might belong to them, but it's in our backyard. And I'll tell you something else. I think the whole metropolitan New Orleans area in the whole country got a first-hand look at how just incompetent Orleans Parish is with this recent rainfall we had on August the 5th. Anybody got any comments, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morello. Seeing none, Councilman Segura to close.
Okay, thank you. Well, I hope that, oh, I'm sorry.
Do you mind
No,
if I say
go ahead.
I just want to say, not necessarily to address Mr. Morello's comments, but I think it's important, while we up here have been through this since going back as far back as September, I think it's important to understand where this particular legislation comes from that Councilman Segura has proposed. When the Uber, Lyft, TNC taxi discussion took place, the taxi cab industry in large numbers were involved in those discussions. Mr. Gunsakira, as the representative of the taxi cab union, was there. Tiger Hammond, the president of the AFL-CIO as well, and a number of different taxi drivers and other representatives of the industry. And during that discussion, what Councilman Segura, who was acting mayor at the time, myself as the proposed author of the original TNC legislation, we asked the taxi companies and the unions, tell us the ways that you feel our regulations in Kenner put you at a competitive disadvantage or otherwise make it more difficult for you to operate than you believe Uber, Lyft, et cetera, do. What we received from that was a bullet point listing from Tiger Hammond, from the union, jointly with the taxi cab industry, that outlined those issues. From what I read of what's being proposed here, this addresses those very issues. And the way the questions were posed is, you require X of a taxi driver, so when you're looking at Uber, you either need to make them do it or eliminate that requirement for taxis. What this legislation does on each of those issues, as I appreciate it, is basically says, if we're not requiring it for Uber, Lyft, et cetera, then we're not requiring it for taxis. So my point in all that is This is an answer to the requests of the industry to help us level the playing field, to keep everyone at a competitive advantage or level playing field, whichever you want to call it. So I'm in favor of this for that reason. I think this absolutely levels the playing field as we were requested to do so by that industry itself. And so I think this is a great effort, and hopefully, well, after the next meeting, when we finalize that second part of it, hopefully we'll wrap this whole taxi/TNC issue up in a bow and put it to bed for a long time, I hope. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Segura to close.
Okay, thank you. Well, not to take up much more time, I think we've already had all of our questions answered, at least I believe so from the various nods that I'm seeing, that between the help with Michelle Hart and Mr. Naran, I won't even try to pronounce that name. Dominic's good at it. I can't get it. But I think and hope that everyone's questions have been answered to give them the confidence that, as Councilman Posada just said, as I repeat, yes, this is what we were doing to answer the issues that the taxi industry had put up as a hope that we could help them out with to make the level or play and field with, at that time, what we now know is a TNC competitive component. And so hopefully this is that, and so hopefully everyone will agree and vote for it. And then we will continue working with the city of New Orleans, particularly because that other part that's been amended out is more of an issue between the city of New Orleans and us, and then the drivers of the taxis, if they want to pick up what rules and regulations they'll have to deal with in New Orleans. So that's where I'm at with that. So again, I appreciate the time and effort and help from everyone who's given me information on this, and hopefully that you will see fit to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Madam Clerk, we haven't voted to accept this, have we? I've been so long, I forgot if we have or had not. But did we vote to accept already, or we haven't done that?
We have not voted to accept.
Right. All right. Yes, nobody else. Please, nobody else. Motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilman Wilmot to accept. Council, please vote. Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 12B is summary ordinance number 12,277. An ordinance amending ordinance 11,283 to correct erroneous vehicle information for the donation to the Town of Amite Police Department.
Motion by Councilman Klein, second by Councilman Reyno. Council, please vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 13 is resolutions and motions by council members. Item 13A is a resolution in support of the mayor's implementation of a policy establishing an apolitical workforce for non-civil service employees based on the Hatch Act.
Motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilman Epistado. Councilman Segura, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. And I'll, again, try to make this brief. I think we had a fairly lengthy conversation 2 weeks ago on this as what the intent was, but just in case someone may not have listened to that council meeting, what we have is, yes, we have a charter revision that was voted on, I believe it was 2012, that did have a 70 or so % in favor, and obviously that gave the understanding that the electorate out in the city wanted a non-political workforce. There is a component of employees, and for Mr. Brown's non-civil service people, not talking about civil service, non-civil service, that were not compelled to either be, had no guidance to be not involved in political processes. So subsequently, this referendum was put out and passed that laid out restrictions. It, as I have heard, was pretty much discussed prior that this would be an unconstitutional words. But until someone challenged that in court, it was the law that the city of Kenner followed, and obviously administrations, 1, 2, or 3 that were in place at the time, have done so. and there was no involvement by that non-civil service class of employee in elected cycles, or if they were dealt with. So then, as we know, a couple months ago, I think 11 employees in that non-civil service class took their right as a citizen of this country to file a suit in federal court asking for a decision on whether that language was constitutional or not. So that suit has been making its way through the courts, and some couple of weeks ago, the judge handling that case issued a restraining order, which in effect stopped the city of Kenner from enforcing the language in that referendum, as the judge went on in a 50-some-odd page brief to explain was not that it's a ruling on her part, but an indication that it's going to be overturned as not unconstitutional. So, but at the present, by issuing a restraining order, then there was absolutely no prohibition for these individuals to not be involved in political activities. Subsequently, as a result of that, the mayor, in doing his due diligence to understand 70% of the people at that time wanted a non-political workforce of employees, understood that between the time that restraining order was issued until the time that the judge does make her final decision, they were free to do whatever they wanted politically. So he chose to address that vagueness or vacancy that the judge mentions a whole lot in her brief, and I'm not a lawyer, but I know when I read it, it had a lot of the words Hatch Act. If this was there, then this would have been okay. So he, obviously from correspondence we received from him, put a policy in place that puts these workers under his policy, which to some most part mirrors Hatch Act requirements, which is a federal non-political process for non-civil service employees. So I commend the mayor for taking that action quickly, because it did put these employees in a boundary to understand where they cannot go out. So the purpose of the legislation that I have now to vote, it was just say, hey, let's acknowledge that that was a good move, and it is the intent of the council to understand the voters' desire to have this apolitical workforce, the mayor's desire to comply with that and do it constitutionally until she makes her ruling. If she makes her ruling in favor of those plaintiffs, then it's completely thrown out, and then it can be addressed as to what to do in a more fixed place, like new language that goes up for a referendum that can be prepared, and with the guidance of this court case, be more constitutional. So that is what we're doing. Hopefully right now is just sending our message as a council that we recognize the dilemma, but we want to keep this workforce apolitical by assuring the mayor that we are supportive of his policy, and then once the judge makes her ruling, which does appear that she will side with them, and then we can all come back and work on putting another referendum perhaps back before the voters that will have language with the guidance, as I just said, to be more constitutional and be able to speak loudly as to both what the public wants, the council and administrations all agree to do. So I asked our council members to please support this resolution. Again, resolutions are just a good faith saying, hey, we like what you did, but it has no fact of law, so we're not in effect telling the mayor to do anything. He's already done it. Thank you for doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Reno, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have documentation here that dates back to 2011, specifically ordinance number 10,303, which was vetoed by Mayor Yenny. The city attorney at that time was Keith Conley, and he has an opinion that references section 3.12 of our home rule charter, that we as a council can't tell the mayor, hey, this is how we want you to basically have your employees regulated, or whatever word that you want to use. I mean, basically, the mayor is the chief executive officer. Our home rule charter clearly designates his responsibilities compared to the council's responsibilities. And in this opinion that our then city attorney, Keith Conley, put, he also referenced an opinion by the AG, which also brings up section 3.01, section 3.09, section 3.10, and section 3.12, basically just saying that, you know, we can't dictate to the mayor what, you know, how he's supposed to handle his employees. So based on this information that I have, and also the fact that in section 8.04 of our home rule charter, a political activity is defined, and it says political activity means an effort to support or oppose the election of a candidate for political office, or to support a particular political party in an election. I don't think that Hatch Act covers all of that. So based on that, I will not be supporting this legislation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Wilmot, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say, too, and reiterate what I said at the last council meeting, and as a result of the judgment that was handed down, I understand, or ruling, what happened was we had to do something. Something had to be done quickly. And I applaud you, Mayor, for doing what you've done. And of course, it's alluded to, from what I understand in that ruling, that the Hatch Act appears to be something that would be constitutional. There's a lot of rulings on it. And so we, as the city, had to do something. And I appreciate your fast actions, Mayor. And as a result, by doing this, a resolution, it just reinforces what you've done, such as Councilman Segura's already said. This just supports that. And in the future, we have the opportunity, we can come back and we can pass something it's more, probably has more stringencies to it than what's here. But for now, this is a good thing, and I thank you for doing what you've done, and I will be supporting this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman DeFranchise, you have the floor.
I think there's someone ahead of me now. It says 2 of 2. No? I didn't want to step on anyone's toes.
Clears his off, you'll be next.
Okay, not a problem then, thank you. I just didn't want to step on anyone's toes. Basically, this has already been implemented by the mayor. That's step 1. Number 2, we had a discussion on the second floor with some of the CAO and other people on the second floor, that this is a first step. It is a first step and only a first step. The Hatch Act does not address the entire issue. I think everybody here probably understands that, but it is a first step. And therefore, I can't be against taking a first step as long as we continue to work together to make sure that we address what the public requested us to do, and that is to have an apolitical workforce. So working together, I think we can all make sure that we look at future legislation which will address exactly and address and do what the public requested us to do, is to make that workforce apolitical. But it is a first step. And you have to take the first step sometimes before you can take the second and third. So we'll look forward to the second and third.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And I have just a couple of comments. First, full disclosure, I will be supporting this, but, you know, as everyone has stated, you know, I was part of the council in 2012 when the council, you know, this was presented to the public. Obviously, we all know the public voted overwhelmingly for what they thought it should be. We as a council obviously did not do our due diligence and put enough information into it to make it clear cut. So that was something we are dealing with right now. I do believe the intent from the citizens and the residents was one thing, and the intent or the perception was that they felt it should be something strong. But according to the courts, as we all have said, we are not there right now in that position. And based on the smoke coming out of the courtroom is that, you know, she did what she did, obviously, that we need to do more. Unless we do more, she's going to make her decision. If she makes a decision, it's going to be that. We all know what we feel the intent was. So the mayor did what he had to do. As the mayor, we do believe we should do more with this. We're going to have to go back and do more with this, but we have to do something. We just can't sit around and not do anything. And hopefully, when we go back, we have an opportunity to address the opinions, to address the ideas, to address the positions of the people within the city of Kenner who were clear when they voted on this. So, but this is where we are today. As Councilwoman DeFrances said, we are here today. We have to make decisions going forward and address things as we go forward. So, like, again, I will be supporting it. Just wanted to put those, because I was around in 2012, and I was on the council, so those are our decisions, and we have to make amendments to those things. Councilman Segura?
Oh, I was just going to close. I did not.
Okay, now, Mayor Zahn, you have the floor.
Okay.
Thank you, Council Chairman. Yes, this is just basically, as y'all know, a resolution is either a request or a show of support. So I appreciate those council members that are going to show support for an apolitical workforce. That's going back to what you said, Councilman Carroll. You know, we have a federal judge. She's obviously made it clear she's happy with the Federal Hatch Act. I think we need to be happy with that. It's the first step, Councilman DeFrances, I agree. But step two, I would urge this council, as we're going into step two and getting near to that in the future, whenever that's going to be, let's make sure we don't get ourselves back in that same situation, because we can't afford more lawsuits. This is ridiculous. The lawsuits that have come out that are going back and forth are ridiculous. We've got to make sure we stop spending the taxpayers' money. The people that voted for this, okay, we're doing what they wanted, apolitical workforce. That's why we acted immediately when the ruling came down. But at the same time, those people that voted, the 70%, let's take into consideration that 100% of those people, we have their tax-paying money. And we want to support those taxpayers and not spend it, not get ourselves into another lawsuit that becomes another issue and we go through the same thing. We've obviously seen where the federal courts are going with this. We've got to work together. I pledge that we will work together to make sure that we can make something that is acceptable to everyone and obviously to the courts, so we don't have to go through this again. But this, for right now, is the first step to show the 70% out there that we support their request. At the same time, we don't want to get sued again. So thank you for your support. Thank you all for our apolitical workforce and supporting this and showing this administration that you are on the same page as us. I knew that. I knew this would come, so I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Segura, just close.
Thank you. Everybody's comments were right on target. It is what we needed to do. It is what's been done. We, Councilman DeFrances, first step comment, she's correct. I mentioned that once the judge makes the ruling at whatever point in the future, the good and bad is if it's against us, we lose what's there and it has to come out, but it opens the door for us to then start on a new path of language that will be deemed constitutional if challenged. So much as I don't want to see the court rule against us, but if they do, then we can immediately pick up and start working on the second step, which is putting language together that will be able to withstand a constitutional challenge, and then ensure, as we've all said, and the public understands, we all are in favor of an apolitical workforce. So again, I thank my colleagues for supporting this, and let's get it passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Madam Clerk, let's vote individually, just to be clear.
You want to call a roll call?
Yeah, I'm gonna
vote?
call it, yeah, call roll call. So motion by, let me say it again, motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilman Impastato to accept, and let's do a,
Okay. He called a roll call?
yes.
So I'm going to go ahead and, roll call is going to go in this order.
Oh, okay, because
Okay.
once before, it's just started here.
I
That's
know.
No problem.
I'm going to go, should have done it this way, so we're going to go ahead and do it as
Go
a
ahead.
roll call. Division A,
Yes.
Division B,
Yes.
District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3, District 4,
Yes.
District 5. Mr. Chairman, motion passes 6-0. Councilmember Reyno has abstained.
Thank you.
Item 13B is a resolution temporarily suspending Council Rule Number 11 of the Rules of Organization, Business, Order, and Procedure of the Council of the City of Kenner and rescheduling the Kenner City Council agenda deadline to Friday, September 1st, 2017 at noon for the council meeting of September 7th, 2017.
Motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilman Klein. Council, please vote.
Aye.
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 Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 13C is a resolution authorizing a public hearing to be held on August 17th, 2017, during the regularly scheduled meeting of the Council of the City of Kenner to allow the citizens of Kenner the opportunity to comment on the Kenner Police Department's application to the United States Department of Justice Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant Program fiscal year 2017 local solicitation of $13,693 for police officer overtime for law enforcement activities and criminal investigations.
Motion by Councilwoman DeFranchise, second by Councilman Wilmot. Council, please vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 13D is a resolution calling a public hearing on September 7th, 2017, to determine whether the structures located at 2309 Kenner Avenue in Kenner, Louisiana, shall be abated by repair, rehabilitation, demolition, or removal.
Motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilman Reyno. Councilman, please vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 14 is items removed from the consent agenda. We have none. Item 15 is acceptance of contracts and similar matters approved by the mayor. Item 15A is summary ordinance number 12,276, an ordinance authorizing repair to the Case 850K dozer unit number 2101 by Lee Tractor Company, an authorized dealer, in the amount of $32,702.61 for the Department of Public Works Division of Streets and Drainage.
Motion by Councilman Reyno, second by Councilman Wilmot. Council, please vote. Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 15B is summary ordinance number 12,278, an ordinance accepting the lowest responsive bid received from Rex A. Hemel Company Incorporated for the Punch Train Center surge protection in accordance with bid number 17-6398 in an amount not to exceed $18,370.
Motion by Councilman Reyno, second by Councilman Klein. Council, please vote.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 16 is ordinances and resolutions in summary for first reading. Item 16A is an ordinance approving amendment number 1 to the agreement with Bayou Tree Service Incorporated dated February 10, 2015 to furnish and install, maintain, and water trees in accordance with seal bid number 14-6245, which increases the not-to-exceed amount from $25,000 to $50,000 annually for the Department of Public Works. Item 16B is an ordinance authorizing the purchase of bunker gear utilizing the City of Alexandria contract bid number 2123, ordinance number 35-2017 with Casco Industries Incorporated, not to exceed $254,000 for the Kenner Fire Department. Item 16C is an ordinance accepting the lowest responsive bid received from Beacon Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Incorporated in the amount of $28,644 to furnish and install new AC at Gladys Gym in accordance with sealed bid number 17-6401 for the Department of Parks and Recreation. Item 16D is an ordinance accepting the lowest responsive bid received from Terrabound Solutions in the amount of $5,014 to furnish 6 dog days benches with backs at Kenner City Dog Park in accordance with telephone bid number T17-2515 in an amount not to exceed $5,014 for the Department of Parks and Recreation. Item 16E is an ordinance accepting the lowest responsive bid received from Terrabound Solutions to furnish 2 Fido and Me fountains at the Kenner City Dog Park in accordance with telephone bid number T17-2514 in an amount not to exceed $6,329 for the Department of Parks and Recreation. Item 16F is an ordinance accepting the lowest responsive bid received from Beacon Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Incorporated in the amount of $29,898 to furnish and install a new AC system at Woodward Gym in accordance with sealed bid number 17-6403 for the Department of Parks and Recreation. Item 16G is an amendment to the City of Kenner's official zoning map ordinance 11,062 Unified Development Code adopted March 17, 2016, more particularly rezoning Lot 3B, Square 278, Highway Park Subdivision in Kenner, Louisiana from C2 General Commercial to SI Special Industrial. Item 16H is an amendment to the City of Kenner's official zoning map ordinance number 11,062 Unified Development Code adopted March 17, 2016, more particularly rezoning Lot 46A, Centani Subdivision in Kenner, Louisiana from R2 two-family residential to SI Special Industrial. Item 16I is an ordinance approving supplemental agreement number 1 to the agreement with the City of Kenner, the Department of Transportation and Development, and the New Orleans Regional Planning Commission for the New Orleans Airport Connector Road Segment A, State Project Number H.011276, Federal Aid Project Number H.011276. Item 16J is an ordinance amending portions of Chapter 16 entitled Vehicles for Hire of the Kenner Code of Ordinances as per the ordinance contained herein. Item 17 is reports from the council and/or special committees.
Councilman Impastato, you have the floor, sir.
To go back to the drainage issues that were discussed in the mayor's report, I just want to report to District 5 residents that we are extensively looking into it. And what has happened for the last 2 years, there's been a drainage study done for that area that we appropriated out of the District 5 account $50,000. Mayor Zahn, when he was the was the parish councilman for District 4, that includes our area of Kenner District 5, appropriated $100,000 of parish funds to commission a study. That was held up due to some issues on the parish end that I can't entirely explain, but it was finally recommissioned and completed. We just got that report back literally a week ago. So that design process has been in place. The construction cost of it is anywhere between $7 to $23 million to do all of the phases. So it's an extensive challenge. It's certainly an issue that has needed state and federal assistance, and will need that going forward. But that is a project that will provide relief all along the Loyola corridor, basically all along all of the drainage canals, along the west return wall and Lake Pontchartrain. So that design is completed. We now have to find the funding for it, which is certainly going to be a challenge. But I just want to let anyone know, mainly who's watching, that is on the radar. When people are saying, what can we do about it? Well, we know what the engineers are telling us can be done about it, and we just have to find the funding to be able to do it. So I just wanted to report that to District 5 residents. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Moreno, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to mention something in the Times-Picayune newspaper today. They had an article regarding metro area home prices. And while New Orleans home prices are slipping and actually coming down, Kenner's home prices are up about 4.5%. So, and that's for the first 6 months of 2017 compared to the first 6 months of 2016. So I just wanted to mention that because we've had some meetings and a few people say that home values are actually going down in Kenner, but it looks like, based on this, they're actually going up. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilman Will Mott, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. And I just wanted to mention, and earlier I said that Julie Stokes, Representative Julie Stokes, has access to some information and of course, staff in Baton Rouge regarding grants. But also I wanted to mention State Representative Joe Stagney. He's also on municipal, cultural, parochial, and cultural affairs. They too have access to certain information regarding grants. So those are two folks that I think that we can use for contacts for that. So I just wanted to mention Representative Stagney as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I'd just like to mention that over the weekend last Saturday, I had the pleasure of being invited to an event in Rivertown which commemorated and celebrated from the country of Nicaragua for, and I hope I don't get this wrong, for St. Dominique, or Mr. Sadi, am I correct?
Dominic, not Dominique.
Dominic?
Domingo.
Santo Domingo, yes. Santo Domingo. And it was a fabulous celebration. Look forward to, I think it was the 17th year that this celebration has been celebrated. Had good food, good conversation, good company, good music. So next year, if you get an opportunity, please come out and celebrate. I think that's it. So, yeah,
People.
Madam Clerk,
Audience.
where are we?
Yes, sir. Number 18 is new business. We have none. Item 19 is unfinished business and/or motions to reconsider or remove from a tabled position. We have none. Item 20 is persons wishing to address the council on special subject matters.
Yes, ma'am, we have a few. Name and address, sir.
Al Morella, 4260 East Loyola Drive, 5th District, 45 years. First of all, I want to extend my prayers to the Lynch family. The elderly gentleman that was a victim of a brutal attack in Woodlake Estates last month passed away from them injuries, so extend my prayers to the Lynch family. One other thing, since we was talking about some areas of Canada that had some high water after all that torrential rain, one area you all didn't mention, Chateau Boulevard between Joe Yenny and Vintage, the right lane was completely underwater. The side street going to the school, Chateau Elementary, people picking up their kids, the water was so deep it was up to the bottom of the people's car doors. And the school bus had a hard time negotiating that high water to get to the school to start putting the kids on the bus. So I just want to mention that. And I appreciate the fact, Dominic, that you said that Jefferson Parish operates the pumps. And I know firsthand in front of my house, in front of Canal Number 7, when those pumps are running, because all I got to do is look at that water and see if it's moving. And it moves pretty fast. That pumping station we got moves that water pretty fast. Now, one thing I'd like to talk about is this dysfunctional agency in our city called the Kenner Housing Authority, okay? Now, Mayor, I want to direct this to you. In the Kenner Star, this month's issue of the Kenner Star, they listed some actions, some steps that you plan on taking or you may have taken already. And some action is better than inaction. But I don't believe, in my opinion, that it's aggressive enough. So this is what I recommend. And being a former board member on that dysfunctional agency, I have a little experience with what's going on over there. And I can tell you I was a board member for 3.5 years, refused to turn my head and look the other way, and launched an investigation, brought in the OIG, put a 5,000-watt light bulb on them people, and brought in the news media, and they was all over the news, and an ongoing investigation, 2 resignations while I was there. The only reason I left was because I decided to run for mayor in 2014, and I didn't want to be in violation of our charter. That's why I stepped down. But I haven't missed a meeting since then. Now, they haven't had a meeting in 2 months, and they can't have a meeting because they don't even have a quorum anymore. In the meantime, Ben Carson, the Secretary of HUD, was here Tuesday. Now, HUD brought him around and showed him just what they wanted to show him, and he left here well satisfied. but he don't know what's going on in our city with this dysfunctional agency. So now this is what I'm proposing to you,
30
Mayor.
seconds, Mr. Morella.
Okay, this is what I'm proposing to you, Mayor. You need to form a coalition of leaders in the surrounding parishes because all of these agencies are having serious problems. And the culprit is HUD themselves. You need to form a coalition of surrounding parish leaders, have a sit-down with the state attorney general and the U.S. attorney, and launch a massive investigation into HUD themselves and a massive audit of their records. They are the problem. And until we do something about HUD, this is not going away. Anybody got any comments, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morella.
You want to address me, Mayor? I'll stay here.
Yes, Council Chairman.
Mayor Zahn, you have the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Morella, I totally agree. We have been doing a thorough internal investigation along with other entities investigating this. We were about to be very aggressive, is what you would say, today and pull a trigger, but because of my family emergency, we had to postpone that until tomorrow. Rest assured, you'll be happy with the news headlines on Saturday morning.
Thank you, Mayor. Anybody else?
If I may, Counsel.
Thank you. Oh, okay.
If I may,
Councilman Bastato.
Al, unrelated to what you just spoke of, I just wanted to, seeing you reminded me, we commissioned the work for the repair of the bridge on East Loyola. I believe Bow Brothers is the one who the contract is with. It's like $8,900 it was for the damage to the bridge. That's coming out of the District 5 Infrastructure Fund. So that work should be underway. If it hasn't started yet, it's coming shortly. So
Can I respond,
Yes,
Greg
sir.
Carroll?
Yes.
Okay. Councilman, I appreciate that information, and I knew you would. I knew you would take care of it. But I also want to say this. Who's going to be held accountable? I mean, the driver that veered off of Joe Yenny and caused that damage on that bridge, if he has insurance, I mean, his insurance company, I mean, is the city going to be reimbursed for the money that we have to spend to get that railing repaired?
Assuming everyone was identified, we have the appropriate police,
Yeah.
it wasn't a hit and run, that sort of thing, yeah, the city will pursue that to the fullest extent available, assuming the guy has insurance, there's all those different things that have to be looked into. But
Yeah.
If trust me when I tell you, as the person who, as the District 5 infrastructure funds were depleted and we don't have a whole lot of them, trust me, I want to see that money back in the
Oh, yes,
District 5
absolutely,
budget
man.
as much as anybody, so,
My favorite word, aggressively.
there you go.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Naran, did he leave or is he still here? He's gone. Thank you. Mr. George Brannigan. Name and address, Mr. Brannigan.
George Brannigan, 608 Carmenere Drive, Kenner, Louisiana. Live in Chateau Lakefront. And Councilman Segura, Wilmot, and Klein, we had a meeting last night for the Civic Association in regards to a little love note that I got from code enforcement telling me that I had to move a trailer that was parked next to my carport. It's been there 20 years. And basically, it's the new ordinance that was changed with the new development and, looking at vehicles and stuff that's out of place. They said that the compliance was extended to 24 months, and it is April 3rd, 2018. So I'm just trying to find out if I can park my trailer next to my carport on the grass, because it says that it has to be parked on a hard surface. Any questions, call the city, and the guy says you have 24 hours to move it, or you have a $200 a day fine. So I just want to make sure that if my trailer is parked next to my carport on the grass, I'm not going to get a little love note from the city until after April 3rd, 2018.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Brannigan. Hold, there's a couple of gentlemen who would like to speak. Councilman Klein, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Brannigan, after we met with you last night, I consulted the city attorney. I met with her, and she's prepared to answer your questions about that.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Brannigan.
Hello.
I believe that what you were cited with was a section of the Kenner Code of Ordinances. So the section you're citing on the setback requirements for recreational vehicles is not why you received and I think it's a warning, it's not a violation yet.
Right.
But the Kenner Code of Ordinance section, I believe, is Article 7, off-street parking, Section 7.12, parking in front yards. Parking is limited to the paved driveway or parking pads only for vehicles and for trailers. So, in other words, you can park your trailer, but it must be on a hard surface. So
Okay.
the section that they're referencing is 7.12 of the Kenner Code of Ordinances. It is not the recreational vehicle provision in the UDC, the Unified Development Code.
So basically, the trailer cannot be parked on the grass next to my
Correct,
property.
that's correct.
It has to be on a hard
Hard
surface.
surface, yes, sir.
Okay. All right, and the second thing that I have a question about is, there's been code enforcement sweeps, and obviously I was one of them, that's what triggered this. Most of you know me, I put up many political signs in the last 25 years. And a political sign under the code says it can't be more than 32 square feet. A temporary banner cannot be up for more than 30 days per calendar year. And when I'm looking at these rules and regulations, Councilman Impastato has a banner on a building that's 140 square feet, and I just would like to know how that is allowed in the city of Kenner when the limits are 32 square feet, can't be up more than 60 days before election. It was up in May, and basically you can do it 14 consecutive days, maximum 30 days per year. So I just would like to get an answer on that.
Yeah. I'm actually kind of surprised that it took 6 months for someone to come here and ask that. I applied for a permit for that sign. When you look at the Code of Ordinances, and the city attorney, I'm sure, will correct me if I'm incorrect on this, but the political sign rules are actually an exception to the overall sign regulations for the city. So in researching that to ensure compliance, because you're right, I agree with you, Mr. George, I think it would not comply with the political sign portion of that. And it's certainly the 60-day, it certainly was up there longer than 60 days. But that is the headquarters. That is a sign for the office that is maintained there. So I applied for a permit with the city of Kenner just as if it were Acacia Financial Group or my law firm, any business. Basically the same rules that apply to every business in the city of Kenner, we applied for and followed the requisites, or at least I was told by planning and code that that sign would comply with the sign requirements for the city as a whole. So we applied for the permit. I'm sure someone could get the application if need be and prove that I did in fact
Oh, I mean,
do
if
that.
you're telling me you have a permit.
You know that. You would trust me.
I get that. I'll trust you.
But just so you know, that's what we went
So
through.
basically, a person can put a banner on a business, and that's they are saying that the banner can go on the business, and it can be any size.
Well,
It doesn't have to comply with the political stipulations in the code.
well, what I'll say, I'm not going to, what I'm reciting to you is what I was told by code in the city attorney's office when we went through that. If you want specific interpretations or hypotheticals, I'm going to defer to the city attorney's office.
Okay.
But what I can tell you is it's not just a banner, it is a sign that I was told by code and the permitting, and the permits associated with it, that it complies with those permit rules just as if it were a restaurant or whatnot, and would comply on that building. So
Attorney
if it
Roussel.
didn't, trust me, if it didn't, I'd love to take it down.
But what about the 60-day limit?
So Mr. Brannigan, could you, just hold on one second. Attorney Roussel, could you add a little more clarity to our
Yes.
conversation?
So the section of the UDC that you're referencing is actually temporary signs, right? So those 60-day requirement, the signs being limited in size to 32 square feet in area, okay, those are the exemptions. What Councilman Impastato is saying is that he applied for a permit to have a sign at a location. Now, it is a political sign, but it doesn't come under the political sign exemption from getting a permit in this section of temporary signs. He's got a permit that he applied for. It was granted.
So these provisions that you're referencing are inapplicable to the signs at this location.
Can I get a copy of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's online, is it not?
It is, yes.
It is online?
It's Appendix
Yeah, it's
A
the
to the
city
Code
codes.
of Ordinances. Yeah,
Okay.
but I'll give you a copy of it,
No,
absolutely.
I'll get it.
Okay.
Mr.
Appendix
Brannigan,
A?
you can continue or whatever other question you had, if
No,
there
that was it. You know, I was just shocked that a 140 square foot sign would be allowed. I mean, I put political signs up since 1996 in Kenner. It's been a long time, and never seen anything like this before. So, no, you answered my questions.
Thank you, sir. And then Attorney Russell, someone will give you a copy of that information. Thank you.
Greg?
Greg, he has.
Oh, Councilman Reno, you have the floor.
Just in response to the first issue that George brought up about the violation, is there any way to put the ordinance number that is being violated? Because that would solve a lot of problems if code would just, whoever the code inspector would just write per ordinance such and such. It's just kind of like getting a traffic ticket.
Correct.
You know, the police officer puts whatever you violated, it's on the ticket, so that there's no question as to what it is.
Yeah, I actually agree with you on that. It says, if you have any questions, please call code enforcement, but, it would be helpful, I think, if someone gets a warning, that it reference the actual provision they're being warned about. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that would be something that the code director could take up with his inspectors.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. So that's more of an administrative position to be able to enhance when a citizen receives a citation. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Mr. Greg Teff. Name and address, Mr. Teff.
My name is Greg Taft. I live at 3720 West Loyola Drive here in Kenner. I have a question, and I don't want anybody to take this wrong, please. But there's a big concern about the pavilion, a major concern. And the people are asking for a little bit more specifics of what is taking place, and also of the code and the code violations that they were written up for. Where are they, and what is still outstanding? There has been some people that actually went and took pictures of the pavilion. I mean, it's still a mess. And it doesn't really look like, for people that's passing it every day, that anything is being done. So, I know that code enforcement's been real busy, and they're doing a good job as far as getting things done. Because we're now people are starting to realize they can't just do what they want to do. But you got people now that are concerned about where we at, especially like something like the pavilion. They really would like to have an answer of what's happening. And I don't mean that negatively, because I know a lot of stuff is flying on it, a tremendous amount, but it's because people are just concerned. As you know, the Kenner Star had this great article, and these people, when they went out there, they feel like they were let down, because what the Kenner Star said that took place at the pavilion doesn't appear to have happened. So I'm asking, where are we at, and can we give people more specifics as to where the pavilion's going?
Thank you, Mr. Teff. Hold on a second. Mayor Zahn, you have the floor.
Yes, Mr. Teff, as you know, and I don't take it negatively, I appreciate the comments. As you know, because you thanked me and liked it on Facebook, or Next Door Neighbor, maybe that's what it was, the latest report that I put out there. I've had urging from some constituents to give a more thorough update. Let me back up a little bit. The Kenner Star article, I believe in the newspaper, regular newspaper, and also at least 2 or 3 council meetings, I've given progress reports. But like anything else, we don't own the pavilion. So, you've always heard past administrations say it's kind of hard to go into the Esplanade Mall and tell them how to run their business. We did what we could do with code enforcement and also if they perceived it as a threat, I don't know. I don't think we did. But we got their attention, and I think I was pretty thorough within the bounds of the law, constraints of the law, that I could actually say the things that I said in my latest post, which, again, you were appreciative of, and I appreciate that from you. We got a lot of good response from that post. We're giving as much information as we can on the businesses that are coming. As I stated, and I did 4 items, number 1, 2, 3, and 4, I went through and I said, we're getting 2 restaurants, a salon. The 4th, and those, I was very clear, they're under contract. The last thing I want to do is mess anything up. I don't want to step in there and mess that up. The 3rd thing, I was very specific because the contract is signed. So that contract is going to be the event center, again, that I mentioned at this 4th council meeting. So we have given that report on where we can be, where they are. We did talk also about the possibility of someone leasing or maybe even purchasing another area of the mall. I would love to be specific what area that is, but again, I can't, because I'm not going to be the mayor that screws it up, and then I have to read next door neighbor with a lot more comments that we're not doing enough. I'll leave you with this. And look, again, I appreciate your support. You're one of the first constituents to go up here and thank me for the work with the pavilion. I'll do 2 things. I'll get you a more thorough report on the stuff that we can report on those 88 violations. And also, we will do whatever we can to make sure that these property owners continue to go and seek as much as they can. I'm gonna finish it with this. It sat vacant for at least maybe over 10 years. In less than 10 months, there's activity. I'm going to take those numbers, I'm going to take that to the treasure chest and gamble with those odds anytime that I can, because I think that's pretty good numbers. That's a good number, and I'm happy that this council, and I've said it before, this council working with me, our chief of police, our code enforcement, and my administration, not me, my administration, less than 10 months, over 10 years, we're doing pretty good. So we're going to get you, I got your number, your phone number, not your number. I do have your number. No, but I'll get your phone number, and I will get code enforcement. We'll get that to you tomorrow, because I got to leave this council meeting because of that situation I have, and get you where we are in those 88 violations. We're not finished with them. We're not finished with them, but I'm giving them a little bit like, hey, I see some things, and I see some promises, and I see what they've done. And I'm hoping they can either lease out that other spot or purchase or sell it. We'll really be in good shape. But I hope that clears it up for you.
Well, I'll be looking for that. And,
You're gonna get
and
it.
again, I just want to say, what you're reading is from a lot of people.
No, I know. I know.
And I am, basically, they're conveying what they have said.
Right.
But I don't want to mess up what we've been doing with these sweeps either. Because
Believe me, you're not. We're going to keep on with that.
Because that
I know
is
you're
something that has been badly needed. I do have a question, one more question.
You're
if I
supportive
may.
of the sweeps, and I appreciate that, and we're going to continue those. Believe me, we're getting a lot of good support on the sweeps.
I got one more question, then I'll go home. For code enforcement, is there any, or down the road, are you looking at doing anything in the evenings when people are actually home from work or on the weekends? Because a lot of people are frustrated with 5 cars parked in a yard on grass, mind you, and the only way you're going to get them is when they're home, because during the day, everybody is working. And I'm just wondering if there's something down the road that code enforcement has up their sleeve to start addressing some of those issues.
Mr. Walters, please.
First off, know that we have 2 inspectors for the afternoons and on Saturday, and then I have 1 on Sunday. And recognize the fact that code, except for the sweeps, is a reactive department. We respond to complaints. And so if if you are residents in your area that have these complaints, if they call, we can get that done anytime.
Right, but what a lot of people feel, and I'm probably one of them, is that it's hard to rat out a neighbor. It really is.
But we give no information on who calls. In fact, the system that we use to keep these details locked in does not have the information on who called on it. So all they gotta do is call. They could say their name is John Smith, and it won't make no difference, so they don't have to say anything at all.
You have caller ID?
Probably, but we don't take the numbers down.
But all I'm saying is that, there's an apprehension about people
No,
wanting to.
Don't worry about it.
It's just that if at night, like I said, you're seeing grounds getting tore up. Mediums, I hate to tell you, I don't know how the people are mowing the grass anymore, because they got big trucks that park on the mediums at night. They got cars that's parking on the mediums at night. And, and if you say something to them, I'm going to guarantee, because I already did, and it was not a nice conversation. There's some people out there that's ready to box you real quick. But anyway, that's all I have to say, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Teff.
Thank you.
Mr. Richard Brown, name and address, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Richard Brown, 824 Sessions Lane, Kenner, and I'm the president of Citizens for a Better Kenner. I want to follow up on what Mr. Teft was talking about concerning the pavilion with some questions for the mayor and perhaps for Richard Walter with code enforcement. And first off, Mayor Zahn, I appreciate the update that you posted on Nextdoor the other day. I think that helped. I understand that negotiations with prospective tenants and purchasers may need to be kept confidential. I understand that. I'm not making an issue of that. My issue is the code violations and also this extremely misleading article in the newest Kenner Star about what's going on at the pavilion. I think there's a lot more fiction than fact in this article. But according to the article and according to what I recall having read in the news media and from Mayor, from your own posts online on the subject, that the owners of the pavilion were cited with more than 80 code violations. It's my understanding, and part of this is what you had in your post, that the pavilion owners paid, they made a few repairs and they paid fines on the others. But if you read this piece of propaganda in the Kenner Star, said the repair work, let me start over. The repair work to bring the building into compliance with code violations are mostly completed, said the realtor. Our work crews will soon begin to paint the exterior of the shopping center. We will also have crews who will be installing landscaping and benches. This all started back in April. Those of us who live there and the people who have been following this much more closely than I have don't see any of this. Two ladies have gone into the at-home store and taken photographs of the deplorable conditions caused by the roof leaks. We're not talking about 2 or 3 minor leaks where they put out a bucket. We're talking about entire aisles that have been flooded and the merchandise ruined because of the roof leaks. I would like, and I think the citizens would like to know more detail about the status of the code violations. If you can give it to us now, I wish you would. If you can't, I understand. But please, between now and the next council meeting, can we get a full report on the code violations? It concerns me if somebody can make, out of 80 violations, they can make a handful of repairs and just pay a fine on the others and go their merry way without ever correcting it. That's what concerns me. I hope you can address that, Mayor.
Mayor Zahn, you have the floor.
First of all, you heard me before, and I said that we're going to get those reports, and I do have your cell phone number, so I'll send it to you also. So we'll give you the reports on where the funds are and where the other things are. And I guess, and don't take this sarcastically, but did that quote have quotation marks around it, what Benzon said?
No, I think it was, I
Okay,
think that quote was
so-
from the Realtor.
Okay, so maybe that needs to be pointed toward him.
Yeah.
Because what I said is what I stand behind. And you know that. We had
Yes.
we had a text message, I think, on Monday, and shortly after that, you were the constituent that called. I put it on social media. So I think the only thing I have to do at this point is to get you and also Mr. Teff, and look, to social media, the outcome of the violations and where we are. Again, you know, Rome was not built in a day. So, I mean, we've got to work on something that has been in disrepair for probably over 10 years. And, you know, we got the pavilion, that's one thing. There's many other issues, and we're also addressing across the street and also the Esplanade Mall. So we're trying to do all at one time with everyday operations, of course. But we will get you that, absolutely. I can't control, Mr. Brown, what the Realtor says. I think the Realtor is being as most, you know, as forthcoming as what he can be to let the public know this is where they're going. And sometimes, look, I'll be the first one to say, media doesn't always, to defend him, Mr. Bullock, because I appreciate what Mr. Bullock has done. To defend him, they don't always get exactly what you say. But let me get those other things for you and for Mr. Teff and for the rest of the community, and I think we'll be a little better on the same page.
Thank you, Mayor Zahn.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Ms. Deborah Lejeune? Name and address, Ms. Lejeune.
Hi, I'm Deborah Lejeune, 4309 Lake Trail Drive, Kenner, Louisiana, Lake Trail Estate Subdivision. First of all, I just have to say, I'm very unhappy about the Hatch Act. Just so all the citizens, so y'all can all live with it. We get to vote. Secondly, I came home today. I live in Lake Trail Estate Subdivision. I'm the third person I heard in the last 2 meetings complain about Councilman Impostata's signs. You have a sign on the entrance to my Lake Trail Estate Subdivision. That's a violation of code. You have no right to put your name on the front of our subdivision fence. The person that lives in that home did not give you permission to use the fence, and I don't even know if they own the fence. But we want the sign down. That's a violation of code. The only fresh ideas that you have is violating our rights. You violate the charter, you interpret it to what's best for your interests, and then you violate the citizens of Lake Trail Estate Subdivision with your sign entering our street. I don't think so. Please have it taken down. Any questions? I think I made myself clear.
Thank you, Ms. Lejeune.
We want it down, and the owner did not give you
All right,
permission.
I got the message. We'll deal with the owner, and if it's in the improper place, it'll be taken care of. No problem. That's not a problem.
But
Not a
you
problem.
put it up there, and you violated code, and you knew it.
I'm not going to get in an argument.
Okay,
It's
I know, but people come here and tell you that you have a sign that's 150 feet, a political sign, and you found a way around it because you're using ways around the law to beat us. And it's not going to happen because I'm going to keep coming here. Because as I told you before, I wrote the Home Rule Charter, and I'm not going to allow y'all to violate it. I don't care if you're an attorney or not, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Lejeune. I don't believe, Councilman Segura.
Yes, I do apologize. I should have mentioned this earlier when we had the opportunity to announce activities that were coming around the city, but thanks for letting me take a moment. This Monday night, August 21st, there is a public meeting here in the council chambers, 6 o'clock, to discuss the improvements on Williams Boulevard from the interstate to West Metairie. This is part of the 2030 plan, and the engineers will be here to give updates on the planning ideas that are moving forward so that they can then continue with the process of planning the changes to Williams Boulevard. All of the businesses in this area have been notified directly, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of them there, so that they can be informed of what the potential work will be and what timelines and what disruptions it may have for them. So the business owners have been notified, but I wanted to make sure that hopefully the public who uses Williams Boulevard is also aware to come out, if they're interested, to the meeting on Monday to hear and see what's being proposed for that section of Williams Boulevard. So just wanted to get that public notice out there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Motion to adjourn? Move.